Man, what you know about them Texas boys? And I'm talking about the Boston Celtics come through Texas, get a back-to-back win. Houston and Dallas. Dallas tonight is a 30 for 30. Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum special. Let's get into it here on Green with Envy. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. As always, this is your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? The Celtics are living well on a Texas two-step. Come in and get the back-to-back wins against Houston and Dallas. We're going to get all into it, and here to help me break it down is my best friend, co-host, and coach of the podcast, the one and only Greg Manakis. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I think I'm better than Karl Towns.
Yeah, man. So a scoring boom across the NBA tonight. 70 for Embiid in a win, very importantly. Karl-Anthony Towns, 62 in a loss. And yeah, man.
Can we before we talk about the Celtics, can we just talk about the Karl Towns thing? Because I tuned in for both, right? As I was watching the Celtics, my attention was kind of like split between the Embiid thing and the Towns thing. And, the Sixers kind of had it in the bag, and Embiid is just so efficient at the nail. They just gave it to him, and he got anything he wanted that entire game.
23 free throws, I think he had.
It was insane. And then I'm like, all right, well, Karl Towns, I don't think you're a good basketball player. Let me tune in to see you having the game of your life. I shit you not. From the moment I tuned in, Karl Towns made every wrong decision you can make on a basketball court and completely blew the game for them. He was the reason that they lost in the fourth quarter, to the point where they had to take him out of the game because
this is what I was going to say. I tuned in for the end of the third quarter, which was like, he was fine. He didn't, at the end of the third quarter, he was fine. You were texting me and I was like, I didn't see that. I only watched like the last 3-4 minutes of the third quarter. Fourth quarter, I was back focusing on the Celtics, tuned back in around maybe 4:30, and I was like, wait a minute. Like I went to the box score because Karl-Anthony Towns wasn't out there. And I went to the box score and I was like, he does always have foul troubles. Did he foul out of this game or something? And he had 2 fouls. And then I watched the last 4 minutes or so, and it was I don't know if he was tired or if he was just like in the parts that you watched, he was that bad that Chris Finch had to take him out. But he had 62 points, and the guy wasn't on the court for most of the last 4 minutes. It was a weird scene in Minnesota in which a struggling Charlotte was able to pull out a victory.
Yeah, I mean, it just confirmed all of my anti-Karl Towns agenda that I have. So let's get into the Celtics, though, because we had two of our own stars going crazy.
Yeah, like we said, big score night across the NBA, but for the Celtics, it was nothing but good news as they go back-to-back, get a win in Houston Sunday night, then come out here Monday night, and they take home a win 119-110 against the Mavericks. Let's do what we do, and let's go ahead and cue up a morning box score. Boston Celtics take down the Dallas Mavericks 119-110. Let's start with the Mavericks here, and Luka Doncic. Listen, impressive stat line, 33 points, 18 rebounds, 13 assists, only 3 turnovers. However, 12 of 30 from the field, 2 of 8 from 3. We'll talk about how the Celtics were able to defend Luka. Old friend and current enemy, Kyrie Irving, 23 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals for him. He was 9 of 20 from the field. Josh Green, 4 of 7 from 3. He and Tim Hardaway really the only role player that had anything going. Both of them 4 of 7 from 3 for the Mavericks. 20 points for Tim Hardaway on the night. Picked him up in my fantasy league actually recently, so I do appreciate that. Thank you, Timmy boy. Let's go over to the Celtics, and I said at the top, this was a classic 30 for 30 from the Jays. Let's start with Jaylen Brown. 13 of 22 from the field, 7 of 11 from the line. He finishes with 35 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 blocks. Heading over to Jayson Tatum, he has 11 of 21 from the field, 14 of 17 attempts from the free throw line, 14 of 17, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, 38 points total for Jayson Tatum. Drew Holiday helped them out with 17 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists. He was 5 of 12 from the 3-point line, and they needed that in a night where Derek White just could not get it going. Al Horford, 4 of 7 from the field, 11.6 rebounds, 3 assists for him. End of the day, I told you right there, Jaylen Brown, 7 of 11 from the free throw line. Jayson Tatum, 14 of 17 from the free throw line. The Celtics get to the line 30 times to only 14 times for the Mavericks, as you may have heard Brian Scalabrine reference that multiple times towards the end of that broadcast. Greg, where do you want to start here? Do we want to start with just the Jays and their offensive approach? Do we want to start with talking about some of their clutch defensive moments late in the game with their
Yeah.
block shots? Where do you want to go with it?
But before we get started here, I'm just a little confused because I thought you had the numbers right. And then I'm looking at the box score here and it says Jaylen 6 of 9 instead of 7 and 11, and Tatum's 15 of 19. So some numbers, I don't know if they like accidentally gave some free throws to Tatum when they're supposed
I just hit a refresh here. So apparently there was some numbers that were not correct. So yeah. So 6 of 9 from Jaylen, 15 of 19 from Tatum. So 39 points for Tatum, 34 points to correct that for Jaylen Brown. Must have been, I had an old box score up, I guess. I don't know what happened there.
maybe there was like one more foul we somehow missed or
Yeah.
something. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, I think
Good catch. Good catch.
the Jaylen defense on Luka throughout the game and his willingness, and this has just been a consistent trend throughout the year. Jaylen's willingness to pick up 94 feet or to pick up at half court and put pressure at the point of attack. I think it's just really special what he's doing on both sides of the ball. So I want to start with some Jaylen praise because, you know, Jaylen had a rough game against the Nuggets, and it was unfortunate because the last 2 big games where there were a lot of eyes on the Celtics, Jaylen played really poorly against the Thunder and against the Nuggets. And then you see a game like tonight, and this is the Jaylen that we've been seeing throughout this year, right? He's locked in on both sides of the ball. We've figured out a way to unlock Jaylen's on-ball defensive potential, and a lot of that has to do with just him being willing to pick up 94 feet like he did against James Harden in the playoffs last year. That was a big-time game changer in that series. So I want to give a shout to Jaylen for his ability to frustrate Luka, because we'll talk about Luka here in a second, but Luka, despite the gaudy numbers, didn't play well. Right. He was very inefficient. And I think a lot of that had to do with Jaylen Brown.
Frustrated the whole night.
Very frustrated. And Jaylen was cooking him on the other end. You know, he made Luka.
That's where I'm going when I want to talk. But yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Talk about
JB. I mean, that was clear that matchup all night. And I don't think we're going to have the tracking numbers. Probably we're doing this so close after the game. I doubt we'll have the tracking and matchup numbers here, but I'll definitely post more about it tomorrow because it was very clear that the Celtics were like, JB, Luka, we want that matchup. And even late in the game, you saw where Tatum would kind of point it out, like, don't look to me, like the ball's going to the right wing here. We don't even have to get a switch. We have just Luka and Jaylen, which is kind of crazy, right? They didn't even try to make us have to do a switch. They were just like, yeah, we'll take this. It's like, really? Why? Because Jaylen was getting to the nail. Jaylen, we saw him in the first half send Luka flying, over to the right side, hit that step back 3 in the middle of the floor. And, I think for the Celtics, and this is part of a general theory that I have with contending teams, is that you can't have multiple negatives on defense. You can get away with one. You can get away with one, especially if you got some size and, like a guy like Luka gives you 17. But then if you can also go and attack a guy like Kyrie, and, I just think there's multiple holes depending on what the Mavericks have out there that you can go attack. You're going to be in some real trouble. And tonight, JB was just giving Luka the business time after time after time. And much like we saw in the Rockets game the night before, right, when KP had a mismatch versus everybody, I think this is something that this team, without necessarily having to go just matchup hunting, there's certain ways so that they can spam they can spam the mismatches that they find and do so without having to deteriorate your offense, right? And this team is so talented, and now that they're playing with in such a cohesive way that you can trust that, hey, if they do decide to come with a double, which they rarely did for whatever reason, that Jaylen will make that right play. Just like we talked about at the end of that Nuggets game, that he could have forced a shot. And, you did a great breakdown that got some praise online earlier today, where it really showed that, like, he had the right pass to KP. And so I think tonight, watching JB just attack Luka time and time again, and seeing that the team recognized that that's the area that we want to go to, it was just impressive to watch them go to that over and over again and not kind of falter onto that and look to go someplace else.
Yeah, you mentioned the idea of the Mavs not doubling Jaylen, and there's like a theory that I'm still kind of working out in my head about the way that Luka plays basketball. You heard Drew Carter describe it as the heliocentric
Mhm.
form of offense. To me, it's like an egocentric form of basketball where like when you're going up against Luca, it becomes to some degree like a dick measuring contest, right? And that's kind of what we saw tonight is that it's not about necessarily like you have to play the best team basketball. It's if you can take away Luca and like make him feel like he's lesser than the other star on the court. And we had
Mhm.
two of them that
Yeah.
outplayed Luca tonight. I would say that both Jays outplayed Luca tonight. Then he just gets demoralized, right? He has such a big ego, and attacking that ego on both ends of the court, picking him up full court and going at him, he's not going to be the guy. It's very similar to when Kyrie, it's funny they're on the same team now, but when Kyrie demanded that he guard Giannis in the playoffs that year.
By the way, I can never not think of that moment when we play Kyrie. At some point, even if I'm not, I don't mean to think about it, but I thought about that at some point tonight during the broadcast because it's just inevitable.
Right. And I think with Luca, he's too proud to say like, all right, send me help. He's like,
Mhm.
I'm going to play defense here. I'm going to do what I can. And he just gets cooked over and
Yeah.
over again. And this is, I put out a ranking of my top players probably about 2 weeks ago where I haven't watched enough Mavs this year. I'm just like looking at the Luca magic and looking at the Luca numbers. And you see a game like tonight. And if you didn't watch the game, you'd be like, oh, Luca was probably the best player on the court. And that just wasn't the case. Right. It was Tatum and Brown were the best players on the court. And then you give it to Luka, right? Because he still, despite not playing the type of basketball that I like watching, he still
Right.
is able to affect his team being in games and winning certain games against teams that aren't as good as the Celtics, right? So I just think that when you're able to, and I think Tatum and Brown really appreciate that, going up against Luka and being like, we can go up and like whip them out and let's see who's bigger, and like
Put
that's
them on the
kind of,
table, boys. See what
yeah,
we
put
got.
him on the table. And that's kind of what this game was. Sorry, audience, for being so crass, but that's kind of what this game was, and I think Tatum and Brown going up against Luca like that, he didn't really have a chance with those two guys just being the freaks that they are.
Yeah, this was a night where it was all about the Jays, and I think, you know, coming off of the Nuggets game in which I mean, the duo of the Nuggets outplayed the best duo of the Celtics. That's not the entire story, but that is a big part of what happened in that game. And then Houston just wasn't a bounce back night for the Jays. And Kristaps and Derek White, they had plenty of guys to go ahead and take care of business in Houston. And then tonight you look at, this is from the beginning, the broadcast was highlighting it's Kyrie and Luka who average, just under 60 points per game against the Jays. And the Jays weren't having, tonight was a night that the Jays were just like, this is our game, right? This is a game where we have no Kristaps. Like this is gonna be, the scoring load is gonna be on our shoulders. This is kind of what we talked about. I think it was the other day that it's such a absurd blessing for this team that they don't need to have Jaylen and Jayson doing these 30 for 30 type of nights. But if you're going to have a guy like Kristaps who might be out, and once again, I always want to think about this in the context of what if this were to happen for a night in the playoffs? Look at what you can fucking fall back on. Like this is just absurd amounts of riches for what you get tonight from Jaylen and Jayson. And I think especially when you start to look at Tatum, who put up 39, he had 11 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, including that massive block on Tim Hardaway at the end of the game when it looked like the Mavericks were still hanging around, right, with just enough time and enough potential of that Luka magic or that juice to be able to make a comeback. And to see Tatum and Brown, who also had a big block on Kleber late in the game, to see them affect things on both sides of the ball. This is like the Luka conversation that we had with Adam on Sunday, right? Like it's such a blessing to have a superstar and a top tier all-star and Jaylen Brown that play both sides of the ball. And on a night like tonight, you get to see them have impacts on both sides, which is just rare for a team to have two guys at that level, both offensively and defensively, impact the game the way they did tonight.
Yeah, Tatum's defense, we got to talk about that as well. Jaylen was because he's at the point of attack, it's a little bit more like in your face, the impact that he's having. But I think Tatum's ability to switch. I mean, we had Tatum at the 5 when the Mavs went small. It wasn't the best performance out of that lineup. I think they picked on Pritchard a little bit. We had to get Horford back in the game.
I like once again though. I like Mazzulla trying something. I like that he tried it, and then he also corrected it when it looked like, oh, all right, this Luka magic might happen again. He called what I thought was a pretty good timeout, and then immediately on offense they went back to, all right, let's get back to our bread and butter here, and let's go attack Luka and win this game.
Yeah, and this is one of those games, right, where we harp on Joe when he messes up. That's subjective. When he messes up in big games or certain games, and then, I mean, can you nitpick anything Joe Mazzulla did tonight? Felt like he made all the right calls. He tried some stuff. I know Scal doesn't seem to like that 2-1-2 zone that we're going to, but he's still trying it. We're still working that out, and I think that's so important in an 82 game regular season. When you have a matchup like that's coming up against the Heat, you have to have those curveballs that Mazzulla has repeatedly talked about. And I think that 2-1-2 zone is a great example of that. Tatum at the 5, I think, is another good example of that. If on some crazy Brad Stevens, if he just decides that he wants to go out and get an Alex Caruso or get somebody else that can play in that Pritchard spot, if we go Tatum at the 5, there's a chance for an upgrade there, right? I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Celtics are going to stay put. But seeing
real
Tatum
quick,
at the 5,
no, just on that same point, the one thing that I've said, I think this team, maybe I'm unsure if they have, is that they have a small ball 5 unit. Well, if you want to try it out before we get to the deadline, like, now's the time, right?
Right.
Now's the time to put it out there and be like, hey, maybe Tatum can be that small ball 5 if we have those certain matchups that,
when it's Kleber at the 5.
Exactly. Or this would be, I mean, I don't think the Warriors are getting there, but if you're for some reason you feel like you need to go up against like Draymond's at the 5 and maybe you want to go with a smaller unit, like there are going to be a handful of teams that you might feel like this is the way to go. And so you got to try it, right? Or else you're not going to know. And so this also gives Brad Stevens something to look at and say, all right, well, it was iffy, but that was really the first time I think that I can recall off the top of my head that we've really seen Tatum at the 5 for an extended stretch.
Just not giving up on those Warriors, huh?
Well, they're just the easiest example of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We've been on 2 different sides of the fence with the Warriors this year. I just wanted
it's not looking good.
Yeah, not looking good for the Warriors this year. Anybody else that you want to talk about before we look ahead to the matchup with the Heat?
I mean, just like, so we always talk about giving, Derek White his flowers. And tonight he struggled, right? Tonight he struggled from the field. But I still feel like there were little Derek White things that he did that impacted the game from a defensive perspective, from, just making some of the right plays. And so I think, when I think of when you usually give out your grades, I was thinking tonight, I wonder what, and I'm curious, tell me, what would you give Derek White for a grade if you were doing a grade for tonight?
I'd probably give him like a C+. I think
that's what I landed on in my head as well. Cause I was like, this is kind of, and this is what makes Derek White so great, which is what I wanted to point out, is that this is basically the worst Derek White version you can have, right?
Yeah.
Is about a C+ because of all the things that he does. And then just a quick shout out to Drew Holiday, 5 of 12, okay, actually, before I even get to that, there were so many ugly missed threes in this game on both sides, like a bunch of air balls. Derek White, one off the side of the backboard. Drew Holiday, beginning of the game, which, hey, if I don't know if you heard, Scal knew it was our night. As soon as that went in, he may have said that a couple times. But there was that shot. The Mavericks had a couple of air balls, a couple of really just horrible 3-point shots from both teams in this game, which I don't know what was happening there, but just something that I noticed.
Well, I mean, Jaylen talked about it when they interviewed him after the game, when he was kind of making fun of himself. He was so after the game last night, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. After the off the backboard miss that he had on the very first play of the game,
everyone else was doing it. He wanted to get in on it,
right? He was just like, my legs were cooked, like. Second night of a back-to-back tonight, I would imagine most guys on the team were feeling it, as they're on the second night of a back-to-back in Texas. I just think that it's kind of tough to rely on that 3-point shot over and over, especially as the season goes on. We're getting into the doldrums of the season right before the All-Star break. So, those nights will happen. I was very impressed with the way that the Celtics were able to negate a bad shooting night from three, 15 to 46 from three, and get to the line combined between Tatum and Brown. So the other night where they were 13 to 13 and 13 to 14 in that game, I forget which game it was, but when they really stepped up and both of them got to the line. Tonight, 6 to 9 from the line and 15 to 19 from the line. If my math is correct, that's 28 free throws between the two. That is one more than they had in that game where we were like, oh, is this the most free throws combined they've ever had? So we got to get Dick Lipe on that. Friend of the show, Dick Lipe. So I think, the way that the Celtics were able to attack specifically Brown and Tatum, just repeatedly getting to the rim, I think that speaks volumes to the maturity and growth that we're seeing out of those two guys and out of this team.
Yeah, just to your point on the tired legs, this also wraps up 11 games in 18 days. So it's been a tough stretch. Celtics actually only have 11 games, I believe, over the next 30 days. I saw in a tweet earlier. So it's a really weird schedule. So Celtics looking ahead now. So let's move past this now. Celtics now 34-10, still got a 3.5 game lead in the Eastern Conference over the Bucks. Got 2 days off. They go to Miami to round out this road trip. And then I believe it's a 7-game homestand that they'll have from the end of January into the early parts of February. So it's going to be a really nice break for the Celtics here with the 2 days off, go to Miami, come back, and then you have basically 2+ weeks just at home for you to really be able to, get a little bit of rest, be in one place, like not have to cut down all that travel. So like you said, this is kind of hitting the, dog days of summer, but the middle, whatever that you want to call the equivalent here for the NBA season as we head
dog days of winter.
Dog days of winter, I guess. I don't know if that works quite the same, but let's go with it. Let's go with it as we lead up to the All-Star break. But as always, Miami Heat, we hate talking about them, but we got to do it. They're next on the schedule here for the Celtics. And this is rivalry week. This is actually what the NBA has put into its rivalry week for the Celtics.
It's late, guys. Excuse us.
We're doing our best here. We're two grown men trying our best. All right, leave us alone. But they play at Miami this Thursday. What are you looking for in this game that you think is going to be able to tell you something about this matchup going forward?
Well, considering it's the end of this long stretch, I know we do have 2 days off going into this game. So I don't want anybody to overreact to the game. It is a big game. It's on national TV. I do want to see the guys play up to their standard. I don't want to see another bad game from Jaylen Brown. I don't think I could deal with a bad game from Jaylen Brown going against the Miami Heat.
I'll say this. There's no pass for this game like there was for that Bucks game a couple weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I don't even think
that's what I don't think that's going to happen, but I know and I'm with it that game kind of just means nothing. The one thing I think that's a little bit underrated is that it at least gives Milwaukee confidence that because they're not going to treat it like it means nothing. They're going to get them some confidence, but this has to be a game that can't have any resemblance to that one. Just that's an area where there would be a big contention, and I would agree with whatever, with whatever was being said at that point.
Yeah, and I would like to see how much zone the Celtics play against the Heat. I want to see the matchups that the Celtics try. I think Jaquez was out recently. I don't know if he's going to be available for that game. I think he had a nagging injury that kept him out of it, maybe a groin or something like that. So I want to see him because I haven't watched a whole lot of the Heat. When I've tuned into them, he's looked like a really fun player to watch. So it should be interesting to see how the Celtics deal with the new Jaquez, because before the last time we played him, it was like his first couple of games in the NBA, right? So now he's kind of established himself, and I liked him in college. I've liked what I've seen out of him so far. That I'm a huge Bam Adebayo guy, so seeing how the Celtics deal with Bam. Are we going to start Drew Holiday on Jimmy Butler after Jimmy Butler cooked Drew Holiday in the playoffs last year? Where are those matchups? What does Jaylen Brown see as the matchup that he wants? Does he say, you know what, Caleb Martin, fuck you, bro. I know you cooked me in the playoffs, but I'm shutting your ass down. Or is it Drew Holiday that goes and shuts down Caleb Martin, and then Jaylen Brown takes on Jimmy Butler? Because I think that's probably a more natural matchup there, and Tatum also on Butler. So I think there's just so many interesting matchups. I think we're the better team. I don't think anybody would dispute that.
I thought we were the better team for 4 years.
Yeah. Same, dude. I thought we were the better team dating all the way back to the bubble when I was
That's
like, Jake Goddard,
get
the fuck out of here,
I mean, realistically, they're one Jimmy Butler 3-point shot away that we all thought was going in from being 3-0 in the 3 out of the last 4 postseasons against the Celtics. So you can never write them off. But I'm with you. I think I'll be interested to see, number one, the zone. That was the first thing, is like, can we almost reverse engineer what the Heat have done to us with their zone magic that has thrown us for a loop. And then if they do that, what does it look like now that we have Kristaps? Hopefully he's playing. By the way, Jaime Jaquez looks like he does have a little bit of a groin injury here, so we'll have to see if he ends up playing. I hope he does, because he's been phenomenal for them, and he's been really fun to watch in the games that I've tuned into. But I want to see this as fully healthy as both teams can possibly be. I want to see, from the same vein of thinking about Celtics using a zone and how they combat that when Miami goes to a zone. I want to see how Missoula matches up with Eric Spoelstra, right? Because Spoelstra is the gold standard, right?
Yeah.
That's the gold standard of coaching in the NBA today, and that's always going to be an area. Even if I want to, praise Missoula for, I think, improvements that he's made from year 1 to year 2, Spoelstra's a whole other level. It's going to take a lot of time to get to. And so seeing how that matchup goes, I think, is interesting. And then I think the Bam Kristaps matchup, as long as Kristaps is able to play, which I think he should be able to, I think how that works and how that dynamic really changes it. And then, as you said, I really like the idea of the Celtics throwing multiple looks at Jimmy Butler, not just it's Drew's assignment, not just it's Jaylen's assignment, but especially when you have 3 guys that are all kind of designed in different ways to be able to guard him. Tatum a little bit longer, Brown and Holiday can get a little bit more physical. Like, there's different looks that you can throw at him, and I think with Jimmy, it's almost like a good QB. You have to throw, some zones, some blitzes, and you have to disguise it and not have the same looks at him. Because Jimmy, especially when you get to the playoffs and you get him in a series, he's a guy that just seems to figure it out somehow, some way. And he doesn't have to do it. It's much different than Jokic. He doesn't have to do it with scoring, right? He'll find a way to make an impact. And so you got to show multiple looks at him.
Yeah, I'm just excited for that game, man. Hey, one thing we haven't done in a while is just take a look at the standings. We're at the midway point of the season. I haven't looked at the standings. We always talk about the morning box score dating back to when we were little kids, and we'd be eating some Frosted Flakes, pouring over the box scores in the morning. One of the things I always looked at was the standings. Every single morning I would check the standings. I just wanted to pull them up real quick, because I honestly haven't looked at them in a while. So I just want to pull them up real quick and just kind of go through where we're at right now. So Celtics first place in the East, 34-10. We have a 3.5 game lead over the number 2 seed Milwaukee Bucks. They have a half game lead over the Philadelphia 76ers at this point. So the current matchups in the playoffs, you would see the Celtics against the Magic and the Bucks against the Pacers. If we just get rid of the play-in for now, let's talk about seeding. And then you would have the Sixers going up against the Heat, which would be really nice for one of those teams to take.
Funny you looked at this. You said to look at this tonight. I looked at this a little bit before we came on, and I was like, oh man, this is actually like perfect if this were the way that the playoffs were to line up right now. Celtics versus an inexperienced Magic team. I know. I feel so confident after those 2 wins at home earlier.
They've been really struggling with Franz out.
Exactly. Yeah. And either way, they can't shoot. So I think it's gonna catch up to you in the playoffs. You got to be able to shoot. So Celtics Magic, and then you get Bucks Pacers, and the Pacers feel like they have a rivalry with the Bucks. So I don't know if that's going to translate in the playoffs, but I think they're going to give them hell. And you add Pascal Siakam into that mix. Then you get the Sixers and the Heat. So regardless of who wins that, I'm going to assume the Bucks find a way, even if it's in 7 games, to take care of the Pacers. And then you get either Sixers or Heat taking on the Bucks in the second round. And if you're, Joel Embiid just put up 70 points tonight. If he can't get out of the first round again, or if he can't get past the Heat, which is, kind of understandable, but also you're the potential going to be back-to-back MVP. Like, this is setting up for all types of chaos that give the Celtics a pretty nice path to the Eastern Conference Finals, and then potentially whoever's there for them to get back to the finals.
Yeah. And then, I mean, if the Knicks beat the Cavs, that's a tough matchup in round 2. The Knicks, they're a team to keep an eye on, man. I'm interested to see how far they climb up the standings, because they've been playing great basketball since that trade. I don't know when the next time the Celtics play the Knicks, but I'm really interested to tune in for that matchup, because OG gives Tatum problems. We always have trouble guarding Brunson. I think Hartenstein's going to be a key for them guarding Porzingis and being able to get out to the 3-point line. So Don't sleep on the Knicks.
Late February on that matchup, Greg. February 24th.
Okay, day after my birthday. Sounds good.
There
All
you
right,
go.
and let's look at the Western Conference really quickly. T-Wolves and Thunder still at the top of the conference, man. We're
Right there with the
40
Nuggets, yeah.
over 40 games in, and those two teams, those two young upstart teams, still killing it there. The Clippers. Have you tuned into any Clippers games lately?
Not really, to be honest. Like, I got to watch more of the Clippers. Yeah, I just haven't watched enough Clippers.
Suns had a big comeback win over the Bulls tonight, so I don't know how updated these standings are. They're probably
I think they're now 10-3, I believe. Because I believe they were 9-3 going into tonight when they have all three of their big guys, so Beal, Booker, and Durant. So now 10-3 with their big three in uniform. So not a large sample size, but starting to get a little bit of a rhythm. And Phoenix definitely feeling like a team that, in a small 7-game series, that is a small sample size. That's going to be a tough matchup.
Yeah, for sure. Pelicans, it all depends on Zion, whether or not he can get in shape. Last clip I saw of Zion, he definitely looked like he's lost a few pounds, so good for Zion. And then if you look at the Kings, Mavs, Lakers, and Jazz, those are the teams that are in the play-in at this point in the season. That would be a heck of a play-in tournament. Jazz have really come a long way since a tough start to the season. Yeah. Rockets have fallen all the way out, and then those Golden State Warriors, man. That pick that we traded, it's going to be a lottery pick this year. I don't see the Warriors coming back.
Yeah, that's a tough road for them. But let me ask you this. So let's take the Nuggets out of it. Because if I ask you who you think's coming out of the West, you're going to say the Nuggets, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So remove the Nuggets. Thunder, T-Wolves have been up at the top of the standings the entire season. They've been very steadily right there at the top. The Clippers surging. Pelicans, I don't know what to do with the Pelicans. I have a hard time getting a read on how serious I take them. Suns, we just talked about. Kings were, a 2-3 seed last year. Mavericks, we just saw. Lakers still have LeBron and AD. Behind the Nuggets, who would be either the next team or two that if the Nuggets didn't come out, who would make it out of the West for you?
I mean, if the Clippers stay healthy, then I would say the Clippers, just because Kawhi, I think both of us think Kawhi's a top 5 player in the league when he's healthy, right? And he seems to be on a mission this year. The James Harden experiment, I'll eat crow on that. It's been working out. And I think, so far, Westbrook seems to have bought into that bench role. I've always liked Zubac as a big, just being able to set screens and roll hard to the basket. I'm not a huge Norm Powell guy, but I think he's in the right space on that team. I'm not Eric Gordon's on the Suns. And then who there's one more guy on the team that I like.
Terrence Mann.
Yeah, Terrence Mann. I think he's a little overrated at this point, but I do like what he brings to the court. So I'd probably say the Clippers, if it was, I think the Thunder are a move away from being a serious contender. I think they're going to give whoever they play in the playoffs hell, but they're a move away. And then the T-Wolves, I mean, how I feel about Karl Towns, man. That's a little too much faith.
Tonight's a tough night to buy into some T-Wolves stock about, getting to the Western Conference Finals and then making an NBA Finals run. Not a good night for that. And I just don't know that I can see. I don't know. The T-Wolves. And here's the thing. When they made the Rudy Gobert trade, I thought they'd be a good regular season team. So they're kind of just proving that right. And I still have a lot of questions about them going to the postseason of how that will all work when you get them in a series. I totally agree with you on the Thunder. They got to make a move to get – they need another, guy in that 5th through 7th, best player slot. They need another dude in there somewhere. They need a little bit more height too. Chet's their main big guy, he's awesome. He's also a rookie. You got to get something for him in there. They're the team I actually really like, probably the second most. But then I'm with you. I think Clippers and Suns are the next two teams that I'm looking at. If the Suns can stay healthy with this big three, that's a really good big three, and they're 10-3, so they're starting to build a little bit of a resume with it.
Yeah. I think you can kind of write off everything the Suns did before, the guys came back, because Booker's missed a lot of games and Beal missed a majority of the season.
And whatever they are, offensive rating, defensive, it doesn't fucking matter. For them, that's just throw it out the window. You're not going to find anything conclusive from that. But we got a fun home stretch set up for us right now. So Celtics, Miami on Thursday coming up. We'll be back. I assume we'll probably be doing a post-game show for that one. So we'll get you guys the lowdown on that. We'll probably have a podcast somewhere mixed in the middle. So we'll get you guys all set up. So as always, appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure that you are subscribing subscribing to the YouTube page. We do have new memberships if you want to get early access to some of our podcasts, some of the coaching breakdowns that Greg and Adam are going to be doing. Make sure you join that membership and go ahead and join the Discord. We'll have more info for you on that in there. But appreciate it. Celtics 119, Mavericks 110. On to Miami. That's going to do it for tonight. Greg, any thoughts before we play the people out here?
Nah, I got to go to bed, dude.
All right, man. We out of here. Peace, everybody.
Peace.
Every time I get this high, I lose my mind. It don't take much no more until I hit the floor. Every time I get this high, it's you I find. It don't take much no more until I'm at your door.